Hello and welcome to you from wherever it is you are catching today's message. My name is Gerald, coming to you from Kannapolis, North Carolina, located a little bit outside of Charlotte. We are glad to have you wherever it is you are catching us from. We would love it if you would leave us a comment. Let us know where you're at. And friends, we just pray as always that today's word that we bring to you is honoring to God and that it is a blessing and encouragement to you. Now, I don't know if you are like me. Sometimes I read the scriptures, read the Bible, and I see a little section of verses, and at first it's like it doesn't really come to me what is being said. And today is one of those that kind of makes me, when I first read, it's like, huh? And a lot of us, that's the way we do read the scriptures. We don't always understand every single thing that is being said. And for some of us, we may give up. And my encouragement to you is don't give up. Look up the verse, Google it, whatever, and see what you can find out on it. You can find out, the real context of it as well. Read some verses before, some verses after, and maybe it will open up your eyes to it. So our verses before actually come from last week. We're still in Matthew chapter 6. Last week, we talked about storing up treasure in heaven versus treasure on earth. And the idea was we are making with this life here on earth an investment toward our eternity in heaven. And so Jesus wants us to be focused on that, where too often we are focused on what is going on here and making our lives here comfortable, or as comfortable as we can, instead of being focused on the eternal aspect of our lives. So today we're going to be looking at verse 22 through 23 of chapter 6 from the Gospel of Matthew. But I don't know if you are goal-oriented or play sports, and there's a target in sports, or there's a goal, for us to hit an opponent to beat. If you're a baseball player, then you got to hit that ball and get it, of course, usually the goal is to hit a home run for many of us. But it's usually to at least get on base. And if you're training for it, then a lot of us have been taught, keep your eye on the ball, especially as a hitter, is keep your eye on the ball. And as a pitcher, it may be, keep your eye on the glove of the catcher, or maybe the corner of the plate that you're throwing the ball toward. I've never been a pitcher, so I can't say that with certainty. But the thing is we should have a goal or a target that we are meant to reach, or that we are seeking to reach. Some of us are better at goal setting than others. I'm not real good at it myself, but I understand, if I have some kind of target or some kind of goal to reach, then I'm going to set my mind on it, set my plans and intentions on it. And so today's word comes in the context of storing up treasures in heaven. And today's word again comes from Matthew chapter 6, verse 22 through 23. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if the eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? So here again, the context is built within Jesus speaking about storing up treasures in heaven. So the context might be our earthly life versus our heavenly goal or target to obtain. So in reading this, it's almost like, to me, this section of verses about the eye being the lamp of the body is kind of out of place. But Jesus did not put his word or teach things out of place. He didn't jump from one thing to another, really. So it has a point here. But is he really talking about just the eyes? For one, he says the eye is the lamp of the body. And so many commentators think that his idea here is maybe on the mind, or the mind's eye, and understanding that if our mind or if our eye is right, if it has good intentions and set on the right goal, then it will lead the rest of us, the rest of our body, into the right way or into the right place. So the eye being full of light is about the condition of the eye, or literally the mind of the person. One might even say that he could be talking about the heart of the person, because if our heart is right and good, then our intentions should be heavenly focus, Christly focus, focus on something usually more than us. So if we're rightly focused, then we should be focused on things of heaven or God's kingdom. Focus on the investment that we spoke of last week as far as building treasure in heaven versus here on earth. And so I don't know, if you know much about fantasy sports. It's a huge business today. And in fantasy sports, the idea is you are kind of like a team owner, a team manager, and you're building your team of players based on the real statistics and the real life players for the season they're about to enter into, whatever game it is you're playing. And you trade them off and on, and you try to build your team to be the best statistical team throughout the season. But if one of your favorite players, one of your main players gets hurt or gets, for some reason, can't play some games, then that hurts your fantasy team. And for many, you may be looking for a replacement player to trade or to pick up for, to make up for them. Well, I was reading a story this morning about a baseball player. And so the guy, just the real life player was killed in an accident. And the team organization reported that during that time, when the news had hit, they received lots of calls from fantasy players, fantasy team owners, wondering about who the player's replacement was going to be. Their focus wasn't on the fact that a life was lost, or that maybe some children had just lost their dad, or a wife had just lost her husband, or the hurting or the pain that loss caused. Instead, these fantasy owners were more concerned about what the impact was going to be on their fantasy team, because usually there's some money tied to these fantasy games, betting kind of deal. But their focus was not right. Their focus wasn't on the loss of a person. Their focus was on themselves and what that person, the loss of that person was going to mean for their fantasy team and their own pocketbook. And the moral of the thought there is, too many of us get self-focused. And so we concern ourselves about the life that we are building here, the treasures that we are building here on this earth. As we talked about last week, how comfortable can we make ourselves here is usually our goal. But Jesus, he always flips the script, and his idea or his purpose wasn't to come to earth and to live for himself. He came to live for others, for you and I, to serve, to even lay down his life for us. And so he teaches us to do the same, to be more focused on others than ourselves. And in focusing on others, then we build treasure in heaven. As we serve others, as we are generous to help out others, as we bring others or share our story of Christ redeeming us, as we bring others into salvation knowledge of Jesus, then we build our treasure in heaven. Too often we are focused on ourselves and making our treasure here great. We think of investing. We think of buying. We think of possessions. We think of what might make us happy to the detriment of someone else. And why do a lot of marriages fail? Because you get tired of living with the person you've been living with, and you find someone else that you think will make you happier than the person you have. But that's not what Jesus calls us to do. He calls us to follow him, trust him, live for him, die to ourselves to live for him, and to go and make disciples. He never says, I want you to build your kingdom here. He says he wants us to build his kingdom, to be kingdom focused, to seek his kingdom first. But when we become self-focused, we think about us first. And that causes anxiety for some. That causes us to make poor decisions for some. We get distracted by the things of this world that we take our focus off of the eternal world. I've found myself where in many different things I have tried business-wise or gotten obsessed about other things to the point where I had to recognize they were taking up time and affecting my Christian life, my faith life, that I had to lay them down. Where the world might tell me, hey, if you were happy doing that thing, or if that thing was going to bring you success, then go for it. I had to realize that God's call, his purpose for me, is what I should be striving for, instead of making myself comfortable and doing what I want here on this world. So again, to bring this all together, the idea is for us to be focused on our eternity more than our today. Our lives are short and brief here, and God has created us with a purpose. He saved us for a purpose. He sent his Son to die for us, to grant us salvation by his grace and mercy for a purpose. And that purpose is to be used for him in this world, in this life, and to invest in our eternity that we will spend with him later. But eternity starts now. It starts whenever you decide to accept that God did make his investment into you through his Son, Jesus Christ, by giving us him as payment for our sin, allowing him to be killed and crucified on the cross, and then raising him 3 days later to prove that he has power over death, and that he has gone to prepare a place for us, his word says, so that where he is, we will also be one day. That is the home, that is our treasure that is in heaven, that we are to be working toward this day. What we have here is temporal. What we have here is not where we are to be comfortable. We're not to be comfortable in a home that is not our own. Our home is in eternity with Christ. And he has granted us access to it and calls us to live focused on that kingdom. And so I pray that you and I both will live with our eyes focused on eternity more than they're focused on this life. Friends, again, I pray this has been a blessing and encouragement to you. I pray that you know Jesus and his love for you. And if there's anything I can do for you, pray for you, whatever, again, leave me a comment, shoot me a message. We would be glad to help you, to pray for you, to help you understand salvation itself, understand the scriptures itself. That is my goal, is to open up the scriptures and kind of help us understand plainly what they say. And I pray that I do a decent job at that. Friends, do me a favor as well, if you wouldn't mind sharing this with others so that they may also possibly come to the saving knowledge of Christ, or just be encouraged and blessed by his words here today, then I pray that you would do that as well. Friends, I pray you have a great week in Christ. Amen.